that I am able to map out the safest course for those just starting upon their careers. By nature's common bond, I stand in the same relationship to you as I stand in the same relationship to you as your parents, so that I am no whit behind them in my concern for you. Indeed, if I do not misinterpret your feelings, you no longer crave your parents when you come to me. Now, if you should receive my words with gladness, you would be in the second class of those who, according to Hesiod, who's a Greek poet, a Greek, he wrote down a lot of the Greek mythology. According to Hesiod, merit praise. If not, I should say nothing disparaging, but no doubt you yourselves would remember the passage in which the poet says, quote, "He is best who of himself recognizes what is his duty, and he also is good who follows the course marked out by others. But he who does neither of these things is of no use under the sun." Do not be surprised if to you, who go to school every day and who, through their writings, associate with the learned men of old, I say that out of my own experience, I have evolved something more useful. Now, this is my counsel, that you should not unqualifiedly give over your minds to these men as a ship surrendered to the rudder, follow whither they list, but that while receiving of value, receiving whatever of value that they have to offer, you yet recognize what it is wise to ignore. Accordingly, from this point on, I shall take up and discuss the pagan writings and and how we are to discriminate amongst them. Number two, we Christians, young men, hold that this human life is not a supremely precious thing, nor do we recognize anything as unconditionally a blessing which benefits us in this life only. Neither pride of ancestry, nor bodily strength, nor beauty, nor greatness, nor esteem of all men, nor kingly authority, nor indeed whatever of human affairs may be called great, do we desire worthy do we consider worthy of desire, or the possessions of them as objects of envy. We place our hopes upon the things which are beyond, and in preparation for the life eternal do all things that we do. Accordingly, whatever helps us toward this, we say that we must love and follow after with all our might. But those things which have no bearing upon it should be held as naught. But to explain what this life is and in what manner we shall live it requires more time than is at our command and more mature hearers than you. And yet, in saying thus much, perhaps I have made it sufficiently clear to you that if one should estimate and gather together all earthly weal from the creation of the world, I don't know what weal is, weal. Gather together all earthly weal from the creation of the world, he would not find it comparable to the smallest part of the possessions of heaven. Rather, that all the precious things in this life fall further short of the least good in the other than the shadow or dreams veil of the reality. Or rather, to avail myself of a still more natural comparison, by as much as the soul is superior to the body in all things, by so much is one of these lives superior to the other. It is the life eternal, it is into the life eternal the Holy Scriptures lead us, while which teach us through divine words. But so long as our immaturity forbids our understanding their deep thought, we exercise our spiritual perceptions upon profane writings, which are not altogether different, and in which we perceive the truth, as it were, in shadows and in mirrors. Thus, we imitate those who perform the exercises of military practice, for they acquire skill in gymnastics and in dancing, and then in battle reap the reward of their training. We must needs believe that the greatest of all battles lies before us, in preparation for which we must do and suffer all things to gain power. Consequently, we must be conversant with the poets, the historians, with the orators, indeed with all men who may further our soul's salvation. Just as dyers prepare the cloth before they apply the dye, be it purple or any other color, so indeed must we also, if we would preserve indelible the idea of the true virtue, become first initiated into the pagan lore, then at length to give special heed to the sacred and divine teachings, even as we first accustom ourselves to the sun's reflection in the water, and then become able to turn our eyes upon the very sun itself. Number 3, if then there is any affinity between the two literatures, a knowledge of them should be useful to us in our search for truth. If not, the comparison, by emphasizing the contrast, will be of no small service in strengthening our regard for the better one. With what now may we compare these two kinds of education to obtain a simile? Just as it is the chief mission of the tree to bear fruit in its season, though at the same time it puts forth for ornament the leaves which quiver on its boughs, even so the real fruit of the soul is truth. Yet it is not without advantage for it to embrace the pagan wisdom, as also leaves offer shelter to the fruit and an appearance untimely. That Moses, whose name is a synonym for wisdom, severely trained his mind in the learning of the Egyptians, and thus became able to appreciate their deity. Similarly, in latter days, the wise Daniel is said to have studied the lore of the Chaldeans while in Babylon, and after that to have taken up the sacred teachings. Number 4, perhaps it is sufficiently demonstrated that such heathen learning is not unprofitable for the soul. I shall then discuss next the extent to which one may pursue it. To begin with, the poets, since their writings are of all degrees of excellence, you should not study all of their poems without omitting a single word. When they recount the words and deeds of good men, you should love and imitate them, earnestly emulating such conduct. But when they portray base conduct, you must flee from them and stop up your ears, as Odysseus is said to have fled past the song of the sirens, for familiarity with with evil writings paves the way for evil deeds. Therefore, the soul must be guarded with great care, lest through our love for letters it receive some contamination unawares, as men drink in poison with honey. We should not praise the poets. We shall not praise the poets when they scoff and rail, when they represent fornicators and wine-bibbers, when they define blissfulness by groaning tables and wanton songs. Least of all shall we listen to them when they tell us of their gods, and especially when they represent them as being many, and not at one among themselves. For among these gods, at at one time, brother, is at variance with another. Wait, let me read that again. For among these gods, at one time, brother is at variance with brother, or the father with his children. At another, the children engage in truceless war against their parents. The adulteries of the gods and their amours, which is loves, and especially those of the one whom they call Zeus, chief of all and the Most High, things of which one cannot speak, even in connection with brutes, without blushing. We shall leave to the stage. Okay, so he's saying don't read that. They'll act it out and whatever. Don't pay any attention. I have the same words for the historians, and especially when they make up stories for the amusement of their hearers. And certainly we shall not follow the example of the rhetoricians in the art of lying. For neither in the courts of justice nor in other business affairs will falsehood be of any help to us Christians, who, having chosen the straight and true path of life, are forbidden by the gospel to go to law. But on the other hand, we shall receive gladly those passages in which they praise virtue or condemn vice. For just as bees know how to extract honey from flowers, which to men are agreeable only for their fragrance and color, even so, here also those who look for something more than pleasure and enjoyment in such writers may derive profit for their souls. Now, now then, altogether, after the manner of bees, must we use these writings. For the bees do not visit all the flowers without discrimination, nor indeed do they seek to carry away entire those upon which they light, but rather, having taken so much as is adapted to their needs, they let the rest go. So we, if wise, shall take from the heathen books whatever befits us and is allied to the truth, and shall pass over the rest. And just as culling roses, we avoid the thorns, from such writings as these we gather everything useful and guard against the noxious. So from the very beginning we must examine each of their teachings to harmonize it with our ultimate purpose, according to the Doric proverb, quote, testing each stone by the measuring line. Number 5. So we must needs attain to the life to come through virtue. Our attention is to be chiefly fastened upon those many passages from the poets, from the historians, and especially from the philosophers, in which virtue itself is praised. For it is of no small advantage that virtue becomes a habit with a youth. For the lessons of youth make a deep impression, because the soul is then plastic, and therefore they are likely to be indelible. If we do not, if not to incite youth to virtue, pray what meaning may we suppose that Hesiod had in those universally admired lines, of which the sentiment is as follows, quote, rough is the start and hard, and the way steep and full of labor and pain that leads toward virtue. Wherefore, on account of the steepness, it is not granted to every man to set out, nor to the one having set out easily to reach the summit. But when he has reached the top, he sees that the way is smooth and fair, easy and light to the foot, and more pleasing than the other, which leads to wickedness. Of which the same poet said that one may find it all around him in great abundance. Now it seems to me that he had no other purpose in saying these things than to so exhort us to virtue, and so incite us to bravery that we may not weaken our efforts before we reach the goal. And certainly, if any other man praises virtue in a like strain, we will receive his words with pleasure, since our aim is a common one. Now, as I have heard from one skillful in interpreting the mind of the poet, all the poetry of Homer is a praise of virtue, and with him, all that is not merely accessory tends to this end. There is a notable instance of this where Homer first made the princess reverence the leader of the Cephalians, though he appeared naked, shipwrecked, and alone, and then made Odysseus as completely lack embarrassment, though seen naked and alone, since virtue served him as a garment. And next, he made Odysseus so much esteemed by the other Phaeacians, something or other, Phaeacians, that abandoning the luxury in which they lived, all admired and emulated him, and there was not one of them who longed for anything else except to be Odysseus, even to the enduring of shipwreck. The interpreter of the poetic mind argued that in this episode, Homer very plainly says, quote, be virtue your concern, O men, with which swims to shore with the ship which both swims to shore with the shipwrecked man and makes him, when he comes naked to the strand, more honorable than the prosperous Phaeacians. And indeed, this is the truth. For other possessions belong to the owner no more than to another. And when men are dicing, fall now to this one, now to that. But virtue is only dicing, I think, is gambling. So you could like lose something to one person, then it could be lost to another person in another roll of the dice. But virtue is the only possession that is sure and that remains with us, whether living or dead. Wherefore, it seems to me that Solon had the rich in mind when he said, "We will not exchange, quote, we will not exchange our virtue for their gold, for virtue is an everlasting possession, while riches are ever changing owners." Similarly, Theognis said that the god, whatever he might, hold on, there's a weird something. Oh, it's a reference. Okay, it's just weird printing. Said that the god, whatever he might mean by God, inclines the balances for men, now this way, now that, giving to some riches and to others poverty. Also, Proclus, the sophist of Chios, whose opinion we must respect, for he is a man not to be slighted, somewhere in his writings expressed similar ideas about virtue and vice. I do not remember the exact words, but as far as I recollect the sentiment, in plain prose, it ran somewhat as follows. While Hercules was yet a youth, be, being about your age, as he was debating which path he should choose, the one leading through toil to virtue, or the easier alternate, two women appeared before him, who proved to be virtue and vice. Though they said not a word, the difference between them was at once apparent from their mien. The one had arranged herself to please the eye, while she exhaled charms, and a multitude of delights swarmed in her train. With such a display and promising still more, she sought to allure Hercules to her side. The other, wasted and squalid, looked fixedly at him, and bespoke quite another thing. For she promised nothing easy or engaging, but rather infinite toils and hardships, and perils in every land and on every sea. As a reward for all these trials, he was to become a god, so the author has it. The latter, Hercules, at length followed. And there's like the 12 labors of Hercules. That's what the mythology of Hercules is all about. Number 6. Almost all who have written upon the subject of wisdom have more or less, in proportion to their several abilities, extolled virtue in their writings. Such men must be one, such men must one obey and must try to realize their words in his life. For he who by his works exemplifies the wisdom with which with others is a matter of theory alone, quote, breathes, all others flutter about like shadows. I think it is as if a painter should represent some marvel of manly beauty, and the subject should actually be such a man as the artist pictures on the canvas. To praise virtue in public with brilliant words and with long drawn out speeches, while in private preferring pleasures to temperance and self interest to justice, finds an analogy on the stage. For the players frequently appear as kings and rulers, though they are neither, nor perhaps even genuinely free men. A musician would hardly put up with a lyre which was out of tune, chorus, nor a choragus, I guess that's a person who leads a chorus, nor a choragus with a chorus not singing in perfect harmony. But every man is divided against himself, who does not make his life conform to his words, but who says with Euripides, quote, the mouth indeed hath sworn, but the heart knows no oath. Such a man will seek the appearance of virtue rather than the reality. But to seem to be good when one is not so is, if we are to respect the opinion of Plato at all, the very height of injustice. Number 7. After this wise, then, are we to receive those words from the pagan authors which contain suggestions of the virtues. But since also the renowned deeds of the men of old either are preserved for us by tradition or cherished in the pages of the poet or historian, we must not fail to profit by them. A fellow of the street rabble once kept taunting Pericles, but he, meanwhile, gave no heed, and they held out all day, the fellow deluging him with reproaches, but he, for his part, not caring. Then, when it was evening and dusk, the fellow still clung to him. Pericles escorted him with a light in order that he might not fail in the practice of philosophy. Again, a man in a passion threatened and avowed death to Euclid of Megara, but he in turn vowed that the man should surely be appeased, and ceased from his hostility to him. How invaluable is it to have such examples in mind when one is seized with anger? On the other hand, one must altogether ignore tragedy when it says in so many the tragedy when it says in so many words, quote, anger arms the hand against the enemy. For it is much better not to give way to anger at all. But if such restraint is not easy, we shall at least curb our anger by reflection, so as not to give it too much rein. But let us bring our discussion back again to the examples of noble deeds. A certain man once kept striking Socrates, the son of Sophronisius, something or other, in the face. He was slapping him in the face. Yet he did not resent it, but allowed full play to the ruffian's anger, so that his face was swollen and bruised by the blows. Then, when he stopped striking him, Socrates did nothing more than write on his forehead, as an artisan on a statue who did it, and thus write his name, write on his forehead as an artisan on a statue who did it, and thus took out his revenge. Since these examples almost coincide with our teachings, I hold that such men are worthy of emulation. For this conduct of Socrates is akin to the precept that to him who smites you upon one cheek, you shall turn the other also. Thus much may be, thus much may you be avenged. The conduct of Pericles and of Euclid also conforms to the precept, quote, submit to those who persecute you, and endure their wrath with meekness, and to the other, quote, pray for your enemies and curse them not. One who has been instructed in the pagan examples will no longer hold the Christian precepts impracticable. But I will not overlook the conduct of Alexander, who, on taking captive the daughters of Darius, who were reputed to be of surpassing beauty, would not even look at them, for he deemed it unworthy of one who was a conqueror of men to be a slave to women. This is of a piece with the statement that he who looks upon a woman to lust after her, even though he does not commit the act of adultery, is not free from its guilt, since he has entertained impure thoughts. It is hard to believe that the action of Cleinias, one of the disciples of Pythagoras, was in accidental conformity to our teachings, but not designed imitation of it, and not designed imitation of them. What then was this act of his? By taking an oath, he could have avoided a fine of 3 talents. Yet, rather than do so, he paid the fine, though he could have sworn truthfully. I'm inclined to think that he had heard the precept which forbids us to swear. Number 8. But let us return to the same thought with which we started, namely, that we should not accept everything without discrimination, but only what is useful. For it would be shameful should we reject injurious foods, yet we should take no thought about the studies which nourish our souls. But as a torrent should should sweep along all that come near our path and appropriate. Let me back up. For it would be shameful should we reject injurious foods, yet we should take no thought about the studies which nourish our souls. But as a torrent should sweep along all that came near our path and appropriate it. If the helmsman does not blindly abandon his ship to the winds, but guides it towards the anchorage, if the archer shoots at his mark, if also the metal worker or the carpenter seeks to produce the objects for which his craft exists, would there be rhyme or reason in our being outclassed by these men, mere artisans as they are, in quick appreciation of our interests? For it is not for it is not some end in the artisan's work. For is there not some end in the artisan's work? Is there not a goal in human life with the one who would not wholly resemble unreasoning, which the one who would not wholly resemble unreasoning animals must keep before him in all his works and words and deeds? If there were no intelligence sitting at the tiller of our souls, like boats without ballast, we should be borne hither and thither through life without plan or purpose. An analogy may be found in the athletic contests, or, if you will, in the musical contests. For the contestants prepare themselves by preliminary training for those events in which wreaths of victory are offered, and no one by training for wrestling or for the pancratium would get ready to play the lyre or the flute. No one by training for wrestling or for the pancratium would get ready to play the lyre or the flute, the lyre or the flute. At least Polydamas would not, for before the Olympic Games, he was wont to bring the rushing chariot to a halt and thus hardened himself. Then Milo could not be thrust from the smeared shield, but shoved as he was, clung to it as firmly as statues soldered by lead. In a word, by their training, they prepared themselves for the contests. If they melded with the heirs of the Massarias or of Olympus, the Phrygians, abandoning dust and exercise, would have won ready laurels or crowns, or would they have escaped being laughed at for their bodily incapacity? My goodness, this guy writes dense sentences. On the other hand, certainly Timotheus the musician did not spend his time in the schools for wrestling, for then it would not have been his to excel at all in music. He who was so skilled in his art that at his pleasure he could arouse the passions of men by his harsh and vehement strains, and then by gentle ones quiet and soothe them. By this art, when once he played the Phrygian airs on the flute to Alexander, he is said to have incited the general to arms in the midst of feasting, and then by milder music to have restored him to his carousing friends. Such power to compass one's end, either in music or in athletic contests, is developed by practice. I have called to mind the wreaths in the fighters. These men endure hardships by number. They use every means to increase their strength. They sweat ceaselessly at their training. They accept many blows from the master. They adopt the mode of life which he prescribes. though it is unpleasant. And in a word, they so rule all their conduct that their whole life before the contest is preparatory to it. Then they strip themselves for the arena and endure all risk and risk all, endure all and risk all to receive the crown of olive or of parsley or some other branch and be announced by the herald as victor. Will it then be possible for us to whom we're held to whom are held out the rewards so wondrous in number and in splendor that tongue cannot recount them, while we are fast asleep and leading carefree lives, to make these our own by half-hearted efforts? Surely were an idle life a very commendable thing, Sardanapalus would take the prize, or Margites, if you will, whom Homer, if indeed the poem is by Homer, put down as neither a farmer nor a vine dresser nor anything else that is useful. I guess that those are some bad guys, Sardanapalus and Margites, whatever. Bad guys. They're not good. For after we have actually
Sound like
endured many,
cities.
do what?
Polis. They sound like cities, like 'cause the ending of the words are polis, which means city
Oh yeah.
in Greek. Maybe some kind of, you know how
Well,
like
yeah,
you
but
have
they're
the
talking about
epistles
winning a
to
contest, though, right?
well maybe like it's the location or something or
Maybe. Yeah, I guess so. Hold on, I got to get some
yeah,
water.
like oh dry mouth.
Oh, that was a good stretch.
Yeah, it's really good, man. It's a little dense because I don't remember all of this mythology, but I remember a bit. He's basically teaching us how to extract the good things from pagan literature, which I think is pretty easy to generalize into other kinds of like ancient literature.
I heard that lighter.
Yeah. It's the
I'm
halfway
guessing
point intermission.
you're lighting up some incense, right?
Mm,
I'm assuming you're
yeah,
lighting up some incense.
some
Yeah.
Virginia organic tobacco incense, yes.
Right.
So okay, Sardanapalus, and Margites, they're bad. Be they cities or men, they're bad.
Why did my guy go to the other room? What's going on there?
What did you do?
He went to the room below.
I'm not sure.
Whatever.
Hmm. His sentences are really dense, dude. Like they're like he's making like some reference to some story in Greek mythology and then tying it to some Christian principle. It's pretty good.
I think it makes good listening too. Like it's one thing to listen to something that like, you don't, I guess, like really have to pay close attention to, but you get kind of immersed in it when you do have to pay attention to it.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just back up to that sentence again. Surely, were an idle life a very commendable thing, Sardanapalus would take the first prize, or Margites, if you will, whom Homer, if indeed the poem is written by Homer, put down neither as a farmer nor a vine dresser nor anything else that is useful. Okay, so those guys they weren't doing anything good, or cities or whatever. There is not uh is there not rather truth in the maxim of Pittacus, which says it is hard to be good? Question mark. For after we have actually endured many hardships, we should scarcely gain those blessings to which, as said above, nothing in human experience is comparable. Therefore, we must not be light minded, nor exchange our immortal hopes for momentary idleness, lest reproaches come upon us and judgment befall us. Not forsooth here among men, although judgment here is no easy thing for the man of sense to bear, but at the bar of justice, be that under the earth or wherever else it may happen to be. While he who unintentionally violates his obligations perchance receives some pardon from God, he who designedly chooses a life of wickedness doubtless has a far greater punishment to endure. Number 9. What then are we to do? Perchance someone may ask. What else than to care for the soul, never leaving an idle moment for other things? Accordingly, we ought not to serve the body any more than is absolutely necessary, but we ought to do our best for the soul, releasing it from the bondage of fellowship with the bodily appetites. At the same time, we ought to make the body superior superior to passion. We must provide it we must provide it with the necessary food, to be sure, but not with delicacies, as those who seek everywhere for waiters and cooks, and scour both earth and sea, like those bringing tribute to some tyrant, to some stern tyrant. This is a despicable business, in which are endured things as unbearable as the torments of hell, where wool is combed in the fire, or water is drawn in a sieve and poured into a perforated jar, and where work is never done. Then to spend more time than is necessary on one's hair and clothes is, in the words of Diogenes, the part of the unfortunate or the sinful. For what difference does it make to a sensible man whether he is clad in a robe of state or in an inexpensive garment, so long as he is protected from the heat and cold? Likewise, in other matters, we must be governed by necessity, and only give so much care to the body as is beneficial to the soul. For to one who is really a man, it is no less a disgrace to be a fop or a pamperer of the body than to be a victim of many other base passion. Indeed, to be very zealous in making the body appear very beautiful is not the mark of a man who knows himself, or one who feels the force of the wise maxim, quote, not that which is seen is the man, for it requires a higher faculty for it requires a higher faculty for any one of us, whoever he may be, to know himself. Now it is harder for the man who is not pure in heart to gain knowledge than for a blear-eyed person to look upon the sun. To speak generally, and so far as your needs demand, purity of soul embraces these things: to scorn sensual pleasures, to refuse to feast the eyes on senseless antics or the senseless antics of buffoons, or on bodies which goad one into passion, and to close one's ears to the songs which corrupt the mind. For passions, which are the offspring of servility and baselessness, are produced by this kind of music. On the other hand, we must employ that class of music which is better in itself and which leads to better things, which David, the sacred psalmist, is said to have used to assuage the madness of the king. That's King Saul. Also, tradition has it that when Pythagoras happened upon some drunken revelers, he commanded the flute player who led the merrymaking to change the tune and to play a Doric air, and that the chant so sobered them that they threw down their wreaths and shamefacedly returned home. Others, at the sound of the flute, raved like Corybantes, and Bacchanites. Oh, Bacchus, like there's some crazy stories about the Bacchus people. Even so, a great difference does it make, even, even so great a difference does it make whether one lends his ear to healthy or to vicious music. Therefore, you ought to have still less to do with music of such influence than with other infamous things. Then I am ashamed. Then I am ashamed to forbid you to load the air with all kinds of sweet smelling perfumes, or to smear yourselves with ointment. Again, what further argument is needed against seeking the gratification of one's appetite than that it compels those who pursue it, like animals, to make of their bellies a god? In a word, he who would not bury himself in the mire of sensuality must deem the whole body of little worth, or must, as Plato puts it, pay only so much heed to the body as is an aid to wisdom. Or as Paul admonishes us somewhere in a similar passage, quote, let no one make provision for the flesh to fulfill the lusts thereof. Wherein is there any difference between those who take pains that the body shall be perfect, but ignore the soul, for the use of which it was designed, and those who are scrupulous about their tools, and those who are scrupulous about their tools, but neglectful of their trade? On the contrary, one ought to discipline the flesh and hold it under as a fierce animal is controlled, and to be quiet, and to quiet by the lash of reason the unrest which it engenders in the soul, and not by giving free rein to pleasure, to disregard the mind as a charioteer is run away with by an unmanageable frenzied horses. So let us bear in mind the remark of Pythagoras, who, upon learning of that one of his followers was growing very fleshy from gymnastics and hearty eating, said to him, will you not stop making your imprisonment harder for yourself? Then it is said that since Plato foresaw the dangerous influence of the body, he chose an unhealthy part of Athens for his academy, in order to remove excessive bodily comfort, as one prunes the rank shoots of the vines. Indeed, I have even heard physicians say that over healthiness is dangerous. Since then, this exaggerated care of the body is harmful to the body itself and a hindrance to the soul. It is a sheer madness to be a slave to the body and to serve it, because it's not good for the body.
I would take your own advice there, Fletcher.
If we're reading what's in the side chat, it's this is called An Address to Young Men on the Right Use of Greek Literature
Yeah, I
by
know. I
Saint
saw it.
Basil. Now,
But you don't
if we're
practice what you preach.
Well,
if
it's a
we are
different
mind
discussion.
if we are
No, but
minded,
Fletcher comes off as a guy that actually takes these words to heart, and he does not. He does not practice what he preaches.
I think
Actually,
that
he has succumbed to his own fleshly desires. Not only
I
that, he has a weak mind.
I think the
You know what
beautiful thing
the
about
experiment.
the Desert Fathers is
You know
that
what don't
there's
interrupt me, bitch. Don't interrupt me, bitch. Mute this side faggot. Okay. So do you know what the turn experience is? Do you know what it is?
Uh,
all right.
what the heck?
So if
given
we were
spicy.
minded, if we were minded to disregard attention to the body, we should be in little danger of prizing anything else unduly. For of what use now are riches if one scorns the pleasures of the flesh? I certainly see none, unless, as in the case of the mythological dragons, there is some satisfaction in guarding hidden treasure. Of a truth, one who had learned to be independent of this sort of thing would be loath to attempt anything mean or low, either in word or deed. For superfluity, be it Lydian gold dust or the work of the gold gathering ants, he would, for superfluity, be it Lydian gold dust or the work of the gold gathering ants, he would disdain in proportion to its needlessness. And of course, he would make the necessities of life, not its pleasures, the measure of need. Forsooth, those who exceed the bounds of necessity, like men who are sliding down an inclined plane, can nowhere gain a footing to check their precipitous flight. For the more they scrape together, so much or even more do they need the gratification of their desires. As Solon, the son of Excessides, oh wow, Excessides, Solon, the son of Excessides, puts it, no definite limit is set to a man's wealth. That's great. This is the funny thing. I mean, like, look at the etymology of this guy's name, Excessides. Like, he's like the epitome of excess.
No, I'm
That's
telling
funny.
you, like 50. This guy told me 54% of the English language. We don't even know we're speaking Greek most of the time.
Well, this Solon, he's the son of the essence of excess. As Solon puts it,
Nice.
no definite limit is set to a man's wealth. He likes that money.
Greek
Show me the
Greeks have the Greek language is like literally ec- um it is uh extensive on the motion of everything, the mind, in
yeah.
every direction. So
Also,
I'm gonna deafen myself for a bit. I have to do something, but continue. It's good though. It's good.
I can pause if you want me to. I
No,
mean,
no,
if
it
it's
seems like Connor is enjoying
okay.
it. So
I don't mind
I'll be
pausing the
back in like
YouTube video too
20,
if you want. Like if you
like
like you don't have to
half an
miss
hour.
out if you don't want to.
No, no, I'm
Like
good.
it's
I'm
just a
good.
recording button. I can just pause it.
No, no, don't worry. I'll I could read it myself at some point. We could read it again.
Alrighty.
All righty. Also, okay, here we go. Also, one should hear Theognis, the teacher, on this point. Quote, I do not long to be rich, nor do I pray for riches, but let it be given to me to live a little, suffering no ill. I also admire the wholesale contempt of all human possessions which Diogenes expressed, who showed himself richer than the great Persian king, since he needed less for living. But we are wont to be satisfied with nothing save with the talents of Mysian, the Mysian Pythias, with limitless acres of land and more herds of cattle than may be counted. Yet I believe that if riches fail us, we should not mourn for them. And if we have them, we should not think more of possessing them than of using them rightly. For Socrates expressed an admirable thought when he said that a rich, purse proud man was never an object of admiration with him until he learned that the man knew how to use his wealth. If Phidias and Polycletus had been very proud of the gold and ivory with which the one constructed the statue of the Jupiter of Elis, and the other the Juno of Argos, they would have been laughed at, because priding themselves in treasure produced by no merit of theirs, and overlooking their art, from which the gold gained greater beauty and worth. Then shall we think we are then shall we think that we are open to less reproach if we hold that virtue is not, in and of itself, a sufficient ornament. Again, shall we, while manifestly ignoring riches and scorning sensual pleasures, court adulteration and fulsome praise, vying with the fox of Archilochus in cunning and craft? Of a truth, there is nothing which the wise man must be more on guard against than the temptation to live for praise and to study what pleases the crowd. Rather, truth should be made the guide of one's life, so that one must needs speak against all men and be in ill favor and in danger of, for virtue's sake, he shall not swerve at all from that which he considers right. Else how shall we say he differs from the Egyptian sophist, who at pleasure turned himself into a tree, an animal, fire, water, or anything else? Such a man now praises justice to those who esteem it, and now praises opposite sentiments when he sees that wrong is in good repute. This is the fawner's trick. Just as Polypus, just as the polypus is said to take the color of the ground upon which it lies, so he conforms his opinions to those of his associates. Number 10. To be sure, we shall become more intimately acquainted with these precepts in the sacred writings, but it is incumbent upon us for the present to trace, as it were, the silhouette of virtue in the pagan authors. For those who carefully gather the useful from each book are wont, like many rivers, to gain accessions on every hand. For the precept of the poet, which bids us to add little to little, must be taken as applying not so much to the accumulation of riches as of the various branches of learning. In line with this, Bias said to his son, who was about to set out for Egypt, was inquiring was inquiring what course he could pursue to give his father the greatest satisfaction. Quote, store up means for the journey of old age. By means, he meant virtue, but he placed too great restrictions on it, too great restrictions on it, since he limited its usefulness to the earthly life. For if anyone mentions the old age of Tithonus or of Aragnathonius, or of that Methuselah, who is said to have lacked the 30 years of being a millenarian, or even if he reckons the entire period since creation, I will laugh at the fancies of a child, since I look forward to that long undying age, of the extent of which there is no limit for the mind of man to grasp, any more than there is of the life immortal. For the journey of this life is eternal. For the journey of this life is eternal, or for the journey of this life eternal, I would advise you to husband resources, leaving no stone unturned, as the proverb has it, whence you would might derive any aid. From this task, we shall not shrink, because it is hard and laborious, but remembering the precept that every man ought to choose the better life, and expecting that association will render it pleasant, we shall busy ourselves with those things that are best. For it is shameful to squander the present, and later to call back the past in anguish, when no more time is given. In the above treatise, I have explained to you some of the things which I deem the most to be desired. Of others, I shall continue to counsel you so long as life is allowed me. Now, as the sick are of three classes, according to the degrees of their sickness, may you not seem to belong to the third, or incurable class, nor show a spiritual malady like that of their bodies. For those who are slightly indisposed visit physicians in person, and those who are seized by violent sickness call physicians. But those who are suffering from a hopelessly incurable melancholy do not even admit the physicians if they come. May this now not be your plight, as would seem to be the case for most of you who shun these right counsels. That's the end.
Oh, that is an awesome text.
Yeah, dude. It's good. It's really good. Yeah.
I was trying to say to what's his name that like the beautiful thing about the Desert Fathers is that they're so refined in how they talk about virtue that even if we fall short, it's still worth talking about. You know, it's like obviously we are going to fall short because these are ascetics of the highest caliber.
Guaranteed to fall short. I mean, dude, there's this here, let me find it real quick because I think I've got it just sitting here at the ready. I gotta find the tab. But it's by Saint Macarius, who is the teacher of Evagrios. He's like really old, like middle 300s or
Oh,
something like that. Yeah. And where is it? I know I've got it. Here we go. 50 spiritual homilies. There aren't very many writings from him, but there are 50 spiritual homilies. And this is from number 26. But he says, just as the Lord put on the body, leaving behind every principality and power, in a similar way, Christians put on the Holy Spirit and are at peace. Even if war starts externally and Satan attacks, they're still fortified interiorly by the Lord's power and are not anxious about Satan. As he tempted the Lord in the desert for 40 days, what harm did he inflict on him by attacking him externally in his body? For interiorly, he was God. So also Christians, granted that they may be tempted exteriorly, nevertheless, interiorly, they are filled with the Godhead and suffer no injury. If one has reached this degree, he has arrived at the perfect love of Christ and the fullness of the Godhead. But one who is not of this type still wages an interior war. For a certain hour, he delights in prayer, but at another time, he is bombarded by affliction and at war. This is what the Lord wishes. Because such a person is still an infant, the Lord trains him in wars. And both things, like two personalities, spring up inside the same person, light and darkness, rest and affliction. Such persons pray in peace, but at another time they are found in distress. Do you not hear what Paul says? If I have all gifts, if I hand my body over to be burnt, if I should speak with the tongues of angels, and yet I have no charity, I am nothing. 1 Corinthians 13:1. These gifts really are to encourage us. And those who settle for these, even though they are in the light, they are still infants. For many of the brothers have reached this degree and enjoyed the gifts of healings and revelation and prophecy, but because they did not reach perfect charity, which is the bond of perfection, Colossians 3:18, war came upon them, and because they were negligent, they fell. But if anyone does not reach perfect charity, he is bound and taken captive by grace. But if anyone does reach perfect charity, he is bound and taken captive by grace. If anyone approaches somewhat the level of charity, yet does not succeed in becoming completely bound by charity, such a one is still under fear and war and the possibility of failing. And unless he is strengthened, Satan overthrows him. It's
Damn.
like, yeah, dude. And that's, I mean, dude, there's a lot to do. And you can't do it without God. And of course, you're going to mess up along the way repeatedly. Just like the Israelites, like when you look at the Old Testament, that's what they're doing the whole time. They're like, have a prophet come along, like Moses or any of the other prophets, and tell them, hey, here's God, pay attention to God. And then they do for a while, and then they fall away and they start worshiping Baal or some other, whatever, Sumerian or Babylonian god.
Hmm.
Yeah, over and over again.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the Philokalia. I think right at the beginning, it's talking about like the ascent of the holy mountain being marked by the attacks from the demonic. It's like as you get closer to the top, you face off with say like more hordes that are sent down by this general of deceit and evil, and I find that incredibly profound because I think that like in faith a person ideally is aspiring towards perfection. Like perfection is not something that's going to be mixed together with kind of like I guess like mundane transgression. And so there is this like fine tuning kind of like dialing in that has to happen. And I guess like it's good to be reminded of that. It's like it's hard to even imagine such a subtle thing exists as like
It doesn't happen all at once.
yep.
Yeah. Sorry if I cut you off. I
Not
didn't
at
mean
all. I
to.
was actually at like the tail end of that. Man, Mr. Sir missed out.
But not much. I thought it was longer than that. The last few pages of the document are all notes, so it wasn't actually even 15 pages.
Okay. Well, I will say, I think we should plan out some more texts. This will be like my first video on my YouTube channel, and I think we should do more videos like this. Like, I think it would be, like it. I think it's good content.
I'm down. The what we were just talking about made me think of there's these letters from Saint Anthony the Great, and Anthony, he's an old boy. He's the first desert father. Um, he's known as the first one,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, like his dates are like 250. I think he I think he was born in 245 and died in 350. He lived to be 105.
Wow. As an like he
Yeah.
was an ascetic all his life, and he lived to be 105.
He became an ascetic when he was like 15 years old.
Wow. Holy moly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that would make an
Yeah.
awesome that'd be an awesome one to do next. I will be doing like,
Yeah.
archaic Buddhist kind of stuff. So like having some archaic Christian stuff mixed in too would be like fantastic.
Yeah, the letter there's 5 letters, I think. Anyway, there's one of them which is just I think it's the first letter. It might be the 5th letter though. I get them mixed up.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess
I'm scanning.
we just hit 1 hour and 4 minutes and 44 seconds. So I guess I will close out the video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.